Detective James Monroe sat at his desk, surrounded by stacks of case files and half-empty coffee cups. It had been a long night of chasing leads and interrogating suspects, but there was still one case that eluded him: the disappearance of his colleague, Detective Emily Parker. It all started 3 weeks ago, when Emily went undercover to infiltrate a notorious drug ring operating in the heart of the city. She was supposed to check in every 24 hours, but when 3 days passed with no word from her, James knew something was wrong. Despite his best efforts, James hit dead end after dead end. The drug ring seemed to have vanished into thin air, leaving no trace of Emily behind. But James refused to give up hope. He knew that Emily was counting on him to bring her home, no matter the cost. As James delved deeper into the case, he uncovered a web of corruption and deceit that reached far beyond the streets of the city. It seemed that someone within the police department was working with the drug ring, feeding them information and sabotaging the investigation from the inside. Determined to root out the traitor, James began to dig into his colleagues' backgrounds, searching for any sign of betrayal. But the more he uncovered, the more he realized that the corruption ran deeper than he ever imagined. One name kept cropping up in his investigation: Captain Marcus Shaw, Emily's superior officer and a respected figure within the department. At first, James dismissed the notion as absurd. After all, Marcus had been his mentor, the one who taught him everything he knew about being a detective. But as the evidence mounted, James couldn't ignore the truth any longer. Confronting Marcus in his office, James demanded answers. But Marcus denied any involvement, claiming that he was as much in the dark as James. However, his eyes betrayed him, flickering with a hint of guilt that James couldn't ignore. Determined to prove Marcus's involvement, James enlisted the help of a few trusted allies: a tech-savvy hacker named Chloe and a streetwise informant known only as Max. Together, they pieced together the puzzle, following a trail of breadcrumbs that led them to a warehouse on the outskirts of town. As they crept through the shadows, James's heart pounded in his chest. He knew that they were walking into a trap, but he couldn't let fear hold him back. Emily's life was on the line, and he would do whatever it took to save her. But when they reached the warehouse, they found it empty, save for a single figure standing in the center of the room: Captain Marcus Shaw. "I knew you'd come," Marcus said, his voice dripping with malice. "You always were too stubborn for your own good, James." Before James could react, Marcus raised a gun and fired, the sound echoing through the empty warehouse. But James was faster, diving to the side as bullets tore through the air. A fierce gunfight erupted as James and his allies fought for their lives. But despite their best efforts, they were outnumbered and outgunned, trapped in a deadly game of cat and mouse with no way out. Just when all hope seemed lost, reinforcements arrived, swarming the warehouse with sirens blaring and guns blazing. In the chaos that followed, Marcus made his escape, disappearing into the night without a trace. But James knew that their battle was far from over. With Emily still missing and Marcus on the loose, they would have to stay one step ahead if they ever hoped to bring him to justice. As the dust settled and the sun began to rise on a new day, James stood amidst the wreckage of the warehouse, his heart heavy with grief and determination. For in the shadows of deceit, he had learned that sometimes the line between right and wrong blurred beyond recognition. But as long as he drew breath, he would never stop fighting for the truth and for justice for his fallen comrade, Detective Emily Parker. Detective Mark Turner stood at the edge of the crime scene, his eyes fixed on the body lying in the alley. It was a cold winter night, and the fog obscured the streetlights, casting long shadows over the scene. Mark's breath hung in the air as he surveyed the area, his mind already racing with possibilities. The victim was a young woman, her lifeless eyes staring up at the sky. Her purse lay a few feet away, its contents scattered across the ground. It was a familiar sight, one that Mark had seen far too many times in his years on the force. As he knelt beside the body, Mark couldn't shake the feeling of déjà vu. The scene was eerily similar to a string of unsolved murders that had plagued the city years ago. The killer, known as the Phantom, had never been caught, leaving behind a trail of cold cases and broken families. But now it seemed the Phantom was back. Mark's phone buzzed, pulling him out of his thoughts. It was a message from his partner, Detective Rachel Bennett. She had found something, a potential lead on the killer's identity. Mark's heart quickened with hope as he read the message. Maybe this time they would finally bring the Phantom to justice. Without wasting another moment, Mark made his way to Rachel's location, his mind buzzing with anticipation. She was waiting for him outside a rundown apartment building, a look of grim determination on her face. "I think I found something," Rachel said, her voice barely above a whisper. A witness saw a man matching the description of the Phantom entering this building last night. Mark nodded, his pulse quickening with excitement. This could be it, the breakthrough they had been waiting for. Together, they entered the building, the stale air heavy with the scent of decay. The hallway was dimly lit, the paint peeling from the walls. Mark's hand tightened on the grip of his gun as they climbed the stairs, each step bringing them closer to the truth. They reached the third floor, where Rachel indicated the apartment in question. Mark took a deep breath, his heart pounding in his chest, before knocking on the door. There was a moment of tense silence before it swung open, revealing a middle-aged man with tired eyes. "Detectives," he said, his voice wary. "Can I help you?" Mark showed him his badge. "We're looking for a man who may have been seen entering this building last night. Have you seen anyone suspicious?" The man hesitated, casting a nervous glance over his shoulder. I haven't seen anything. Sorry, officers." But Mark wasn't convinced. There was something in the man's eyes, a flicker of guilt that he couldn't ignore. He exchanged a knowing look with Rachel before pushing past the man and entering the apartment. It was a small, cluttered space, the air thick with the smell of cigarette smoke. Mark's eyes scanned the room, searching for any sign of the Phantom. And then he saw it, a glint of metal beneath the bed. He knelt down and reached beneath the bed, his fingers closing around something cold and metallic. With a sinking feeling in his stomach, he pulled out a knife, its blade stained with dried blood. Rachel's eyes widened as she saw the knife. "This could be it, Mark. This could be the evidence we need to finally catch him." But before they could celebrate their discovery, there was a sound behind them, the click of a gun being cocked. Mark's blood ran cold as he turned to see the man from the hallway standing in the doorway, a look of desperation in his eyes. "I'm sorry," the man said, his voice shaking with emotion, "but I can't let you take me in." Before Mark could react, the man raised the gun and pulled the trigger. The gunshot echoed through the apartment, the sound deafening in the small space. And then everything went black. When Mark regained consciousness, he found himself lying on the floor, his head throbbing with pain. Rachel was beside him, her face pale with shock. "Are you okay?" she asked, her voice trembling. Mark nodded, his mind racing with adrenaline. "We need to find him, Rachel. We need to catch him before he hurts anyone else." With renewed determination, they made their way out of the apartment and back into the cold night air. The hunt for the Phantom was far from over, but Mark knew that as long as he had Rachel by his side, they would never give up the fight for justice.